Hello, I'm standing here outside the Hundertwasser house in Vienna. It's not your usual Viennese architecture. You're probably more familiar with the city's grand Baroque buildings, but it's the work of a rather eclectic artist and architect, Friedrich Hundertwasser, who rejected the artistic norms of the 20th century and developed his own rather idiosyncratic style. We're going to be looking at a few of his buildings here in Vienna, but let's start here at the Hundertwasser house, which was built as an apartment block in the 1980s. The first thing you notice is the profusion of bright colours, and then you'll spot the rather uneven floor. These are both typical of Hundertwasser's architecture. He liked lots of colour and he abhorred straight lines. And he thought floors should be uneven because flat surfaces were unnatural and contributed to a monotonous existence. This fountain is typical of his work, built with fragments of different materials. Although the house is still a residential building, you can go up the steps to the cafe. But we're going to go across the road to the Hundertwasser village. This was built as a shopping centre for the residents of the house, and you'll see many similar architectural features here. It's still a shopping centre, but now mostly for tourists. You can buy souvenirs and artworks, or stop for a coffee. There are one or two things not to miss in the village. First, there's a small exhibition room where you can learn a bit about Hundertwasser's life and see some of his paintings. And secondly, the toilets. Whatever you do, don't miss the toilets. They're downstairs, past the water feature, and they're quite remarkable. Not just for the artwork, but also for the voiceover. Yes, Hundertwasser was a bit of a philosopher and an eco-warrior, as well as an architect and an artist.
The dream, but reality. If Pasolini in a film lets actors eat fish, this action is to be understood as a desperate symbol.
Leaving the village, we're now walking beside the Danube Canal, along a bit of path known as the Hundertwasser Promenade. We soon come to an ornate landing stage. This was built by Hundertwasser as a place to launch his own boat onto the canal. Boats were just one of his many hobbies. And around the corner is the Hundertwasser Museum. As you might guess from its appearance, the building is the artist's own creation, and it's devoted to his life and works. Walk up to the first floor to see a timeline of his life. And then around the corner to look at some of his many artworks and some more of his philosophical musings. Of course, the building itself is interesting, with its wavy floor and the ornate staircases. A particular feature is the so-called tree tenants. These are trees that grow up inside the building and pass through the windows. In keeping with Hundertwasser's interest in the natural environment, these are intended to symbolise a coexistence between nature and urban spaces. Before you leave the museum, you might like to spend some time in the courtyard, where you can sit at a wobbly table to have something to eat or drink. But now we're taking a boat trip along the Danube Canal towards our last stop in Vienna, the Spittelau incinerator, a waste disposal plant. This wasn't originally built by Hundertwasser, but he redesigned it after a fire. And by now, you'll be able to recognise the trademark elements of his design. Of course, Hundertwasser's buildings aren't limited to Vienna. You'll find them elsewhere in Austria and in Germany, and in New Zealand, where he spent the last years of his life. So as a bonus, here's a picture of what are probably the most photographed toilets in New Zealand, the Kawa toilets on the North Island.